This week on the David Rutherford Show, Captain Andrew Parks, Bronze Star winner from his time in Iraq in 2006. This is one more in my series of interviewing the real grunts of the GWAT, the guys that were in the trenches doing the job and getting it done. Semper Fi. All right. So again, I'm so excited to welcome everybody back. I want to reinforce this call to action that emerged out of Clay Matthews, my Green Beret buddy, who said, there are a lot more stories out there that are important to understand, not just the history of the GWAT and the challenges that were faced at every level. There's a lot more stories than just the soft community. That is for sure. In fact, I believe continuously, and Jordy was joking with me before. He's like, hey man, people are going to start to think that you have some weird, fascination with Marines. And the reality is I do. I don't think any other unit, builds a camaraderie and a brotherhood better and more in a faster way and really expects more of each other than the Marine Corps units do. And so in continuation of that promise to want to get out and bring other stories, other historically relevant stories, but more important, more stories directed towards the young man of America who are seeking the right types of influences. And that's why it was a no-brainer when Andy Parks reached out, direct messaged me on X and said, hey, I would love to come on and share my story. So without further ado, Andy, it is such a privilege to have you on my show.
Such a pleasure to be here, Dave. And I want to save you some heartache. I think you said Clay Matthews, the football player. Clay Martin is the guy you're referencing.
He's going to kill me. I'm sorry, Clay. I got home last night at 1:30.
I can't have this guy throwing any grenades at you, brother. So let me just say
I deserve that. I'm like exhausted right now. So I apologize, Clay. You can definitely beat me up in the comments. I love you, buddy. Thank you, Andy, for correcting that. All right, brother. Like, I guess I was thinking about reading your citation, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to post a link to that once we release the show, just so people can read it for themselves. And I know you're like, hey man, I didn't do it to get the award, but it is, in my opinion, it's indicative of you as a leader in combat. And I think for me, that's really the inspiring stuff. But before we get into that incredible deployment that I've learned a little bit about, can you let's start at the beginning. Like, why would you ever want to join the military? Well, and in particular, to become a Marine, and then on top of that, to be a Marine officer?
I think my story is weirdly typical, especially in the Marine Corps. There are a lot of family lineages, and I'm one of them. My dad was a enlisted Marine in the Vietnam era. And so I just grew up watching Sands of Iwo Jima, and shit, I could recite Full Metal Jacket cadences at 10 years old. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know that there was ever much of a choice for me. Although along the way, I certainly thought I was going to be a Major League Baseball player. And so I went to college, got to play ball in college, kind of bounced around a little bit. In fact, the first stop I made, the only Division I offer that I got out of high school was to the United States Naval Academy.
Oh, wow.
And the reason you don't know that is because I didn't make it through the United States Naval Academy. In fact, I never even got in the front door of the Naval Academy. A lot of the athletes out of high school, if they don't either make the mark on the SAT side of the house or the GPA side of the house, the Navy sends you to a place called the Naval Academy Preparatory School. Mm-hmm. And it's actually a pretty awesome place. You got kind of a mix of half athletes, and the other half are guys coming right out of the fleet. So a lot of enlisted folks that have gone through those enlisted meritorious commissioning programs. So you got, a bunch of enlisted sailors and enlisted Marines. And that was kind of my first real taste at hanging out with real Marines. Yeah. And they didn't let me down. The boys that I met there at NAPS were some hard chargers, and I really really became good friends with quite a few of them. So when I left, and just continued to pursue baseball, I still knew if baseball didn't work out, man, I think that's still the route that I want to go. So that's exactly what happened. I realized I probably wasn't the next Mickey Mantle about my junior year in college, and said, oh shit, I'm going to have to find a job at some point. And that's when I went out and found an officer selection officer.
Cool.
That's kind of the mechanism for young men and women that want to go become officers in the Marine Corps.
And where were you at? What school were you at where that was available to you? And how did that process work? Was it seamless, or did you have to do some work to find that guidance?
I think I made a call. I think I got on the website and made a call, and they said, hey, you need to find your officer selection officer. There's one on your campus. I was at Ohio University at the time in Athens, Ohio. And if I remember the captain's name, I think the guy's name was Captain Esprit. And he looked the part, jacked up brother, looked good in his uniform. And at that point, I was in pretty good shape. And I think we don't need to lie about it. I mean, that's the first impression you make. What does this dude look like? Yeah. And I think he liked what I looked like. And I said, man, my dad was a Marine. My dad had since passed away, but he had a pretty successful career in the FBI. So I had a lot of his friends that were able to kind of guide me in the right direction. A bunch of Vietnam Marines, Battle of Quai Son guys, and things like that. So
you grew up with the pipe hitters of the Marines from Vietnam as your uncles, your influence. Were you sitting around while they're smoking cigars and telling stories? Did you have access to that, or was your dad a little bit more protective of you, or how did it work?
We did, but we were always on the periphery. The grown-ups, back in those days, grown-ups and kids didn't really hang out too much together. Like nowadays, the mom's got all the kids involved in every conversation. It was very, very separated at that time.
That's right.
But it would be me and my crew of buddies, and all of these guys, Green Beret dads, Marine dads, all Vietnam dudes, Wow. And then guys that went on to start HRT for the FBI, the original SWAT guys in New York City and LA. So we would hear the stories, and then we would go and run out in the woods, get our BB guns and have BB gun wars. And, we didn't want to be the kid to come back crying. So they would just let these little maniacs do their thing. We're going to have a chat. And that's kind of how it was. So nothing was ever really pushed on me. But I grew up with the influence, and that it was just always attractive. I don't know why it wouldn't be to a young man or woman, frankly.
Well, that's what it was like. And I have service in my family, but it's very disconnected, through 2 generations ago. And then everybody became, a professional, like a lot of lawyers in my family. And I knew early on there was no way in hell I was going to want to be a lawyer. I just couldn't do it. But there was always this allure, right? This thing that was being portrayed, whether in film or books. And it was that sense of like, this is what a man is. Like, this is what a man does. This is this ability to have other people believe in you in the most complex, scary situations imaginable. And yet everybody's just like, let's go. And for me, like that I think you experience some of that in sport, but it's not quite the whole thing. And that. And I think I was the same thing. Once I realized, well, my athletic career is pretty much over in college. And what am I going to do? Cause I don't feel the sensation, and I know I want that feeling. And that pulled me in too. So was it after this call, did it feel like it was an insurmountable task, or was just like, all right, it's just checking off the box. These are what I have to do.
I think at that point I just knew it was going to happen. I couldn't see my life going any other direction. Frankly. So then it was just, don't quit. That's all you got. I mean, that was the guidance that I got from anybody that had been there and done that. Like, yeah, you can do it physically, just don't quit. And I think, generally speaking, that is the correct message to give to any young man or woman. I mean, physically, your body will allow you to do a lot of stuff that your mind doesn't think it can. It can. Just don't quit. And I mean, you guys and your brotherhood know that about as good as anybody, because in terms of gut checks, ain't really much out there like buds.
Well, I mean, I certainly believe, that 21 days in the swamp at Ranger School, there are aspects of the Q course that are kicking the nuts. Right. Every, MARSOC's program has gotten phenomenally difficult. Right. And it's, you're right, though. It is that simple. And I mean, I'm sure we chatted a little bit before you came on. You try to mentor young men into the recognition that this could be a phenomenal footstep towards the development of your life and the meaning of your life and whatever other pursuits you want to engage in professionally after your service. But there's something in it that teaches you that where that space is of quitting, right? I think as a young person, it's so relative to the tangibility of physical pain or discomfort, right? You feel it and you're like, okay, I'm going to push back. Sure. Well, in these programs, the physical pain, the physical existence of pain is perpetual by the nature of the job itself. So you're automatically forced to do that deeper, the deeper evaluation of what you believe the mental never quit space is. And that for me is like the coolest thing to witness and see as whether your peers you're going through it or when you become an instructor or a senior level, like you watch it unfold, that expansion of perspective that says, oh, wow, that there is this whole other gear that's available to me. How soon did you really start to feel that in yourself after you got engaged in the program?
Well, pretty early on, Marine Corps OCS, there's a couple different avenues you can get commissioned through the Marine Corps. I went through a program called PLC Combined, Platoon Leaders Class Combined. Essentially, that's a program you do the summer before your senior year in college, and it's the full program. So you got 12 weeks combined. PLC Junior Seniors, you do 6 weeks before your junior year and then another 6 weeks before your senior year. Slightly different approach, but regular OCS 12-week program. And I think, it is a physically grueling event. You don't learn a whole ton. You learn the basics. You learn to march, you learn drill, immediate response to orders, those types of things. But basically it's like, how much shit can you do in a day, boy, and survive? And that's really it. And I was talking to a buddy the other day when I told him I was going to do this program. I was like, dude, do you remember what our attrition rate was back then? And I think regular OCS, which doesn't get a lot of hubbub, I still think OCS is about a 50% attrition rate, 40 to 50%. It's significant. Wow. And so you get a lot of folks in there that I think they come in there in shape because there's minimum requirements for showing up. They think they're in shape, but it's just, like you said, it's working past being in shape. Everybody's in shape. Now everybody's exhausted. Your muscles don't work anymore. You can't do any more push-ups. What do you have to keep you there? And a lot of folks talk about the why now. And mine was just, I got to get that EGA. I can't let the old man down, the legacy, that kind of thing. So I think that was definitely a driving factor for me.
Well, I love that. One of the things that probably one of my favorite aspects of my service was when I became an SQT, a reluctant SQT instructor. I always found it fascinating, right? I think what I love so much about our program is that officers are integrated from the beginning. And and they actually take, more punishment than the enlisted guys do, just as that has to be the case, right? Because the responsibility is exponentially greater when you're responsible for other people's lives. And what I think I had this great opportunity. My boss, my senior chief, Bruce Cunningham, was like, hey, why don't you start working with the junior officers? Because one of the things that I've seen over my 20 plus year career is that junior officers sometimes get rooted in a particular frame of leadership that doesn't evolve into their own. And I think that was the thing for me that really was fascinating, is that being a leader of other men in these units, whatever combat unit you're a part of, or even just a supportive unit too, like you really have to figure out who you are, like how, and to get other people that are your peers, your same age, to want to follow you. Like, and not just like, hey, follow me, clean the head or clean the shitters. Like, it's like, no, hey, we're going to go assault that building that has a bunch of savages in it who want to kill us. Trust me when I tell you, follow me. How quickly did you start to realize that was going to be a huge component of this? Like you needed to assimilate not just the legacy of Marine Corps leadership and what had been the lessons learned, but also yourself and growing.
Yeah, that's a great question, man. And I think that's the answer to that question is something that every young Marine officer has to figure out on their own and in their own time. The Marine Corps does a phenomenal job of hammering this idea into your head from day one. You got to be tactically sound and technically proficient. You have to know your job. You can't fake it. There is no faking it, not in a life and death scenario. So that's number one. You got to be tactically sound, technically proficient, but you also have to do it in your own way. I personally thought, and I actually did this at OCS. This is kind of a hilarious story. But right when you get there, like any boot camp, if you have glasses or contact lenses, they're going to issue you BCGs, birth control glasses. And I legitimately thought if I put these glasses on, these drill instructors are going to jack with me even more because I'm going to look like a nerd. So I wore my contact lenses for a month straight. I would wake up in the morning, and I didn't tell anybody, of course, but I would wake up in the morning. I couldn't see shit. My eyes are so dry, but I did it because I didn't want anybody knowing that I had like a weakness that they could pick on. And so that was my kind of concept. Like you had to look like Billy Badass for Marines to respect you.
Rule number one.
Once I got done with my tour that we're going to talk about here in a second, I realized that is total bullshit. All Marines care about is that you are technically sound and tactically proficient, and you can get them, you can make the right call, you know how to employ the arms. You know, your Marines are your best asset. All you got to do as an officer is really put them in a position to succeed most violently, and they will love you for it. I didn't really get that until I had come back. And then I'd seen some dudes who maybe I thought were kind of nerdy kick ass. And then I was like, okay, doesn't matter what you look like. It matters what you do and what you act like. And so that took me some time to figure that part out.
And that's the beauty of it, right? And I really think that you're like, that's the beauty of leadership, when you have the self-awareness to say, all right, what I'm doing right now is not resulting in the level of commitment from those I'm in charge of. Like, I'm not seeing it. And to have that self-reflection, go, what am I doing wrong? What am I not doing to help this young Marine improve their ability, make them better, and to prepare them for those, more difficult situations? Was there a particular part of your training and that an OCS or anything that kind of stood out to you that really kind of you, like those light bulb moments, right? Those are my favorite moments in any educational process. Is like you look at, like you deliver a piece of a message or an idea or a training module or whatever it is, and you see the person, like they get it. And and then all of a sudden you watch those, the ascension of their abilities improve more rapidly, right? Did you have one of those moments?
Yeah, after OCS, that's when the real training comes. You go to a program, every Marine officer, you could be a lawyer, you could be a pilot, it doesn't matter. And this is one of the really cool things that really makes the Marine Corps unique and special. Every Marine officer goes to something called the basic school. And that's in Quantico, Virginia. That's 6 months, regardless of what your MOS is. Marines have funny little nicknames, the acronym TBS, the basic school. A lot of guys will call it the big suck. I mean, there's a lot of things going on there. Man, my class was so blessed. I went to TBS and got there in November of 2003 and stayed, through the good part of 2004. All of our instructors, the majority of our instructors, were captains that had just got back from either a platoon commander or company command tour in Iraq or Afghanistan. So we had all of this awesome real world, real life experience. And having some of those folks is what really opened our eyes and made us real. Okay, this is real. We're getting it right from the dudes who've been there closest to the position we're about to, enter into. And they either succeeded or failed, and they can give us all that information.
That for me, like that was the change of the whole time for me. Like that's when everything altered. Cause I remember like I'm going through, I was lucky if I got to spend times with guys that were in Panama a little bit, right? I had some guys that, we had this warrant officer Beaujolais, who was the guy that actually did the combat swimmer op that blew up Noriega's boat, which we would hear that, but it was like onesies, twosies, right? And the real big days were when the team guys from Vietnam would come in and tell about their their 5 knife kills. And you're like, what?
We have some of those dudes from Korea even come in.
Right. And so but there's this distance from it. And also obviously, as we now know, and I can't even imagine what the young guys are being taught now in terms of drone warfare, the integration of drones, just changing everything, is like now you're in the midst where your peers, that people that are your same age or year or two older, who just 6 months before were in combat for the first time in a lot since the Gulf War. And now there must have been like this excitement, like this newness to everything that it wasn't before, like, oh, we're going through training and we'll have fun and party on the weekend.
Absolutely.
And maybe someday we'll do some kind of FID that has a potential of something connected. But now it's like, no, you are finishing and you are going to combat. It described that sensation with the information. Like it was palpable, I would imagine.
Yeah, it takes that term notional. Hey, this is a notional exercise. It used to disgust me. You're on the objective. Now, what are we doing notionally? Now when we were at TBS, these guys would stop you in the middle of a patrol and ask you, why are you doing this? And the why becomes everything. The why, this concept of commander's intent. Why are we executing this patrol? Why are we conducting this assault? The why has to be understood to the lowest man, or you lose the effect on target. You lose your ability to win in the absence of orders. You lose your ability to win if the whole command suite gets their ass kicked and killed. And that we saw firsthand in Iraq. Iraq, you had a country, a population. I think they had 10,000 generals. I think they had the second most generals on planet Earth at the beginning of that thing. And we saw, if you cut the head off that snake, their Jundi, the young soldiers, they had never seen an operations order. They didn't understand a why. They knew what you go to that wall and look that way. That was the extent of the orders process. We got firsthand the why from these guys as we're running a patrol, as we're on the objective, as we're setting up a support by fire position. We would always be stopped. Why are you doing this? You would give them an answer. Didn't matter if it was right or wrong. They just wanted the opportunity to say, no, think of it this way. And man, when they could give you that real life information, eyes wide open moments every time. Oh my gosh, geometry of fires. That's why I don't want to set up my support by fire position here, because I got guys running in right here. Maybe if I moved it over 50 meters and got on this high ground, that's going to give us way better effects on target. And so that kind of stuff was the good stuff, man. That was really, really what hit home with a bunch of us.
So I always thought of it like this: is the closer you could connect to the actual outcome of what the effort you were putting in, right? If I invested, countless hours conducting, close quarter battle or close quarter combat, whatever the fuck you want to call it, And then if I know that's going to happen, like I'm getting the feedback, oh, this is the way it goes down from somebody who was just there. And it's like, oh, now I believe it. Like there's an inevitability that I'm going to be tested on whether or not I paid attention. Right. Whereas prior to 9/11, you never knew. And so it lacked this, not that the training wasn't great and everybody, but there was this something missing. And now it wasn't, it was fulfilled. Like you were going to fulfill that requirement. And it was going to happen sooner and later. What was the sequence after you graduated OCS? How did you get assigned? What was the next sequence before you were in your unit to where like, oh, this is a group we got to start training to go to war? And we'll talk about that.
Yeah, brother. So, you go to OCS, you come back home, graduate college, you get your commission, then you wait on a school slot to open a TBS. I think every TBS company probably has, 250, 300 folks in it. You graduate that at the end of 6 months. Here, I've actually heard Jocko. He's like the only guy that I've ever heard that has explained this. And I was a sob story from this process. So at TBS, there's something called the quality spread. And what the quality spread does, it breaks down the company into thirds. The Marine Corps is trying to make sure that every MO, I think there's 22, 25 military occupational specialties that you can get as a Marine officer. You rank them 1 through 25. The Marine Corps wants to make sure that higher achievers get spread out through the entirety of the force. And brother, I was that guy, man. So I was in the top third, but I think I was like 68 out of 70 in the top third, something like that.
Yeah.
So I list my 1 through 23, and the instructors will tell you, you want to be at the top of any third. You can be number one in the bottom third. You're getting your pick first shot, 100% of the time. So I ranked my 1 through 20, whatever. And I remember I had my SPC staff platoon commander call me in, and I didn't even realize it, dude. I love being a Marine, and I love training hard, but I also love playing hard. And so I just kind of thought it was all going to work out. Like, surely they recognize that, like, I'm an infantry guy, and then I'm a force recon guy, and that's just what it's going to be.
Yeah.
Dude called me in the office, and he goes, "Hey, Parks, just want to make sure you're top 5. You're good with anything." So then I was like, well, shit, I'm not going to get my top. My first pick was infantry. My second pick was something called ground intelligence. Yeah. Ground intelligence officers go to infantry officer course. Then they also go to, they're the ones that are like the scout sniper platoon commanders. Yeah. They also usually will then go on to recon. So those are my first two, but then it was like tanks. I was like, shit, if I'm not infantry, man, I'll be a heavyweight champion of the world tanker. I could do that. And then tracks. I actually had my fifth pick I had in front of artillery. Looking back, maybe I wouldn't have done that. But I was like, artillery, man, you're kind of in the rear a little bit. You're still in the fight. At the time, it was an all-male MOS, which in my mind represented like combat. There, that you got to be in one of those to get some. My number 5th choice was something called low altitude air defense, Stinger missiles. And I'd heard that those guys, because there's no air threat, they were just using those guys. It was an all-male MOS, and they were only using them as like provisional rifle companies in Iraq. Right. Like, you're going to go guard something. You're basically an infantry guy, basically, but you're not. Yeah. Anyway, school circle, SPC's reading right down the list. And you could have heard a pin drop when he said Parks, 7204. Every eye in the room turned and just looked right at me like, what? What is that? And I was the same way, man. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to miss this whole thing. I mean, that's really what I thought. I thought the whole reason I joined was to go to war, man. And I'm going to miss this whole freaking thing. Holy smokes.
Oh my gosh.
And so that's how it worked out for me, man. I was a lad guy. There's no fighting it. There's not like, hey, sir, y'all jack this one up. What are you talking about? The numbers are the numbers. The numbers are the numbers. And that's where my thing shook out. And so I went to, got to go to Fort Bliss, Texas for Stinger Missile School. There was 3 officers. It was a gentleman's course if there ever was one. I mean, you show up to class 10 a.m. if you want to. There's one gunnery sergeant there teaching. You're basically learning to identify enemy threat aircraft just by their profiles. And at the end of 6 weeks, you get to go and shoot a Stinger missile. That was the main part of the training. I mean, I hate to bash it like that, but there just wasn't a lot to learn on the back of what we learned. You know, you kind of learned that you're going to want to tie into the radar at some point. And okay. And, you know, I just grew up liking aircraft and threat vehicles and stuff. So I was the honor grad of that school. So I got to pick where I wanted to go. I got to go. So I was like, well, at least I want to go to Camp Pendleton, California.
Yeah.
So I got to go out there to 3rd Lad Battalion. This is where my story is so weird. I show up and my battalion is deployed. They got about 2 months left on deployment. They're not going to send me out there to meet them forward. There's no need.
And what year? What year and what time frame in the year is this?
Yeah. Sorry about that. This is late 2004.
Okay,
so talking fall winter 2004.
Yeah. So Fallujah's already gone down.
I love that you bring it up. So 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines, where I end up going.
Yeah.
You know, they're one of the 6 assault battalions in Operation Al Fajr, the Battle of Fallujah. 2 of my closest personal friends that I'd gone to OCS and TBS with are there.
Oh, wow.
And like, you know, you have your hierarchy as a group. It was always understood that Parks is like the dude. And now I'm having to watch these guys just hook and jab, get it on. You know, both get Bronze Stars out of the deal. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, what is happening to my career? What is going on here?
I'm a Stinger missile guy. Yeah, they're just in it.
100%. But it ended up working out great, man. Lad is actually a great unit. Like I said at the time, all male MOS, and you ended up having a bunch of folks, a bunch of Marines that were similar in mindset to me. You know, a little bit of that disgruntled, you know, what about us kind of mentality. We can fight too kind of deal. And because the mission had changed, we weren't doing a lot of Stinger stuff. I spent pretty much my entirety as a platoon commander executing kind of infantry stuff with my guys. Tons of patrolling, ambush training. We did a battalion package to the Marine Corps Mountain Warfare Training Center in Bridgeport, California, you know, up at 10,000 feet. That's a hell of a course that the Marine Corps has. So we got to do all of that stuff, good hardcore training. And then this brings us to probably, you know, late 2005. My platoon commander tour is over. I am now an XO, and the Marine Corps at large has decided, okay, we are now in a counterinsurgency fight. We got to do this thing a little different. And that's where this whole military transition team concept came about. It came about late 2005. The Marine Corps and the Army together decided we're going to start chopping up small teams, very similar to what the Marine Corps did in Vietnam with the combined action platoons, where, you know, just a couple U.S. Marines would partner with, you know, 20 or 30 indigenous folks, and they would, in a small area, they would work to pacify the insurgency in that area. And there were times in Vietnam that those guys were getting into more fights than the 101st Airborne, for instance.
Oh, a guy I went through boot camp with, who ended up passing unfortunately early, but his father was one of those guys in Vietnam, and that career leveraged him up to where he ended up becoming a part of MACV-SOG, like, because he was so good with his units. They inflicted so much havoc on their areas. Like, they're like, these guys, like, they're crushing the LARP stuff. And yeah. Like they set the standard operating procedures for this. So when I heard about it taking place, I was like, oh, this makes all the sense in the world, right? Because you're working with an indigenous force that somehow has to figure out how to take the weight and the bearing and who better to do that than Marines? Like, this is how you fight. This is how you do it. And then also the camaraderie that just bleeds off you guys, I think is so much more powerful for indigenous people. They just see it, right? That regimented approach to how you conduct operations, right? It's so much different than what the FIT is within SF and all that.
Sure.
But it's the same thing, but even more intense because it's that hardcore combat role. I mean, you guys essentially took on a soft role in probably the most difficult time in the history of the Iraqi war.
It's true. And we did it because there just weren't enough Green Berets to do it, man. I mean, they just didn't have enough. The battle space was too large. They didn't have the manpower. So what's the next biggest thing? And here's what the Marine Corps decided. Well, task organize this thing. If you got 4 Iraqi infantry companies in a battalion, here's what we need. Let's go throughout the whole Marine Corps and find basically executive officers, lieutenants that have already done their platoon commander time, that have done well. Let's grab those guys. They'll be the senior company advisor. And let's grab some badass 0369 infantry platoon leader, usually staff sergeant or gunnery sergeant. We'll make them their number 2. And then we'll staff it with support guys, some law guys, comm guys, corpsmen, et cetera, to make sure they can take care of their ass, when there's an issue. And that's kind of how they formed the team. And by the grace of God, I had some really great friends at 3-5 that told the guy who had been slated to be the team leader, hey, I got another guy that might be able to fill this role. He's in a totally another unit. It's going to be tricky. You're going to have to call over there, get him to cut orders, chop this kid away from the unit. But I think you'll like him. And, you hear about you go to a VFW, not that I go to a VFW, but if I did, you hear these stories at the bar that you're just like, that's horse shit. There's no planet that would happen on. In my particular case, this is really how it happened. And so, I got shopped and it was basically like a tryout. I got to go to what they call now, or what they called then, Mojave Viper, but it's basically like the month-long workup at 29 Palms.
Yeah.
Where you're operating every day. You're really executing those tasks that you're going to have to execute in combat. And so I got shopped to this team. One of my closest personal friends was the intel advisor on the team. He introduces me to the boss. I think our personalities just meshed. I was kind of competing, I think, with a few other folks, organic from 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines. And I just took that the technical and tactical proficiency stuff seriously by that point, because I really wanted it. I really wanted to go to war. And I became our fires officer. So I had to prove myself that I knew what I was doing, calling for fire. You got to do it live a bunch of times, and you got all these instructor observers there that are, you better have your head and ass wired together, or they will jump on you. And then I also did the JTAC primer stuff. So I got to learn how to do all that stuff.
Who gave you the inside skinny that's a guaranteed way to get on the battlefield? Did somebody tell you that? Did one of your buddies say?
My boss, man, my boss was like this. He goes, "What are stingers?" And I go, "Sir, they're freaking surface-to-air missiles." He goes, "So you probably have to do some coordination with aircraft." And I go, "Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, big sky, little bullet is what we tell the pilots, but they don't want to hear that stuff." So time and space, and so once I could speak the language to him, he was like, "All right, yeah, you're going to be our guy. Go do it and prove to me you can do it." And I was able to, and that's really how I earned the spot on that team.
So it's funny, even though, it spiraled out, it ended up spiraling back in. And
better to be lucky than good, man. Better to be lucky than good.
I think that's the way all, great, humble leaders describe themselves. But obviously, from what I'm hearing, you had a reputation amongst your peers that were like, hey, this guy, we need to have this guy in a leadership role in a combat situation. And so, you created that luck for sure with how dedicated you were to really being proficient at whatever they put in front of you, regardless you want it or not, you realize that I'm going to have to do it the best I can do it to get to where I want to go. And that's part of that meritocracy that I think is so critical for young people to realize, that you can enter into the service. And if you drive yourself, you establish yourself, you work hard, you learn the skill sets, and you're, for lack of a better, you're gung ho about your career. Like it works that way. And that's the thing that
nailed it.
That's the beautiful aspect of the service.
That was always my message to my Marines. And that has always been the message that I, try and push to my son, his peer group. It doesn't matter what you get assigned in initially. If you want something bad enough, there are absolutely opportunities in that great meritocracy that you talk about. And that's always been the most beautiful thing about our nation's military, as far as I can tell. And I hope it continues down that road. We've seen some challenges over the last 10 or 15 years where maybe we're getting away from that merit-based solution. But if they just stay on that track, there's literally nothing you can't do if you want to work hard enough and try hard enough in that space. And that's what makes it so cool. That's what makes it the ultimate opportunity for young men and women. It really does. And I hope it never changes.
I agree. And I think, and this is a sidebar. We can talk later if you're interested, but I think it just took the right person to go back in and reestablish, hey, we are here for the war fighter. And that's what Pete and his crew are doing. I've got a lot of friends in and around him, Sean Parnell, having him to articulate that at the highest level. 485 day deployment with
yeah, I just saw that the other day.
Army infantry.
Those poor Army guys, man, extend.
Crushed. And he's right there pitching this, the thing that made his outlaw platoon so good. He's expressing that now, the big Veterans Day thing he did with Sean. And I love to see what they were reinforcing. And I think that's what we all want to do. All right. You now get into the place you want to be, 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines. When did you get the team that you were going to be going to Iraq with? And did you know, walk me through that, how you got the command, and then when they told you when you're leaving, and then what that whole process was like?
Yeah. So we probably ran that Mojave Viper exercise that I was talking about in October of 2005. I think, at the back end of that, I think, Bill McCullough was my boss's name. Had Bill McCullough stayed in, Commandant of the Marine Corps. Not my words, the last commandant's words upon his retirement. I was there. He retired as a colonel, regimental commander. But I think he selected or had his team at the end of Mojave Viper. He made his selections. At that point, we got to do some really cool stuff. We'd had a little, got a little intel from the front that we're probably going to be a pretty active unit. So the Marine Corps was willing to spend some money. They sent us out to Gunsight Academy. We became foreign weapons. We went through their foreign weapons instructor package, civilian school, but really high end. Most shooters know about Gunsight and Bill Cooper and that stuff.
Unbelievable.
Got to go out there for a week, and that was really cool because we really got to bond then. And our team, 12 folks at the Corps. I think we brought on 3 or 4 other support folks as the year forward went on, but those core 12 guys, we got to train and shoot together, have beers together, have steaks together. We really started to realize, so you got senior enlisted guys, and then you got the junior officer types. But at that point, all pros. I was the only new guy. I was the only guy on the team that had not deployed before. These guys are all Fallujah vets, man. So it was pretty easy for me to just sit back and shut up and let them talk about what needed to be talked about. Regardless, though, gave us really good bonding time, and it lasts to this day. I mean, we got our 20-year anniversary from this tour coming up this year. I got maniacs already figuring out where we're going to go, what we're going to do. The recently divorced guys are the ones that have all these crazy plans. Of course.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. Talk a little bit about, you talk about the shooting and the barbecues, the beers together. Why is that so critical Obviously the training itself I think a lot of people understand, obviously you're in a high stress situation. It's very taxing physically, mentally, right? And you accomplish something great as a group. You feel that there's an immediacy to that, but there's an underlying component that I believe, which is the real secret of what it means to be part of a really good unit. And that's that brotherhood, that bond that takes place. So can you describe a little bit of that? And obviously, these guys were able to bring that really, I believe that was the real kickoff to the whole thing was Fallujah. And what the Marine Corps did in that is nothing short of just, one of the greatest feats in I think our nation's history. And to have that influence, can you describe that a little bit for what?
Yeah, listen, I think there is a big distinction between big Army, big Marine Corps, and kind of the more specialized operations that are required for what we had to do. We knew we were going to be away from the flagpole. There was no hire. No saluting, rank. It's all out the window. So we really embraced, and I think most of the teams really embraced this kind of special operations mindset. And it ain't hard to figure out what SF is great at. And it's kicking ass, but then it's also creating this brotherhood through all the extracurricular stuff. You really become, you know wives, kids, all that stuff. And our boss was smart enough to realize this is going to be important over the course of the next year. So we got to start it now because, standard battalion level infantry operations, it's relatively regimented. Chain of command has to be the way it is because you need immediate attention to orders when you're assaulting, Mount Suribachi. We can't have time. I don't have time for you to turn around and say, well, sir, last night over beers, you said, blah. It's got to be more, what's the term I'm looking for? More parochial, I guess.
Yeah.
It just has to be. It has to be that way. But on the special operations side of the house, and I'm not saying we were special operations, but the mission we conducted certainly became that.
Oh, absolutely. That's the pinnacle of special operations.
Yeah.
Small unit leading foreign forces in their own war. That's what special operations grew out of that. That's the core mission. I love it.
That's exactly right. So we had to be able to put all the flagpole stuff aside and really get to know each other as men and Marines. And there's no better way to do that than outside of work. In a more flexible, kind of relaxed environment. That's when you really get to know the heart of the dudes you're working with. And so, like I said, my boss was just a really sharp dude. He actually is the superintendent of Norwich Military Academy, Norwich University.
Yeah.
I took that job in retirement, and those cadets are going to be way better because of it. But anyway, he recognized that early, and we took to it. You didn't have to twist most of our arms to sit down and drink beer with each other. That came pretty easy.
I'm sure.
So working hard during the day, playing hard at night. And then we'll get to how we got to country. Basically the team was split up. Kind of the enlisted guys, unlucky for them, they had to fly over with the battalion. And the battalion had a totally different mission, similar AO, but totally different mission than we had. So they flew forward. We flew forward also on commercial aviation. And this is where the party really gets started. We got to get to go to Kuwait, get to Iraq. And for the MIT guys, they sent all the MIT teams to a place called Camp Taji, close to Baghdad. And they had something called the Phoenix Academy. And I remember showing up and I was like, this is awesome. And I remember thinking like, oh, this is going to be like what Martin Riggs went through.
That's right.
Because I think he talks about Phoenix Company and Lethal Weapon.
That's right.
Yeah. So everything, and back in those days, everything's a movie. You didn't have your cell phone and YouTube. It's all whatever movie you got. So we're all watching the same bullshit movies.
That's right.
So we thought it was going to be, this is going to be a high-speed school. It's going to be a high-speed school. They're going to teach us all the real shit that we're going to need to do. We learned some comm stuff. some basic cultural stuff that we might have to face. But the thing that you could ask any dude on my team, what do you remember from Phoenix Academy? Everybody will have the same story. It was like the last night we were there. We're on an Iraqi portion of the base, and they have somebody from the team you're going to replace come back and give you kind of like a real quick spin up data dump on what they're dealing with, a little quick intel brief. Mm-hmm. And I think we were the last team to go. At least that's how I remember. So everybody's coming through and you're going to go to this area and relatively pacified. And, the team's doing well, a couple firefights here and there. We get our guy comes up and he's a pilot and he's a major. And I know our TO. I'm like, what the hell's that guy doing as part of this team? And he goes, who's going to 131? 131 was our Iraqi unit. 1st Battalion, 3rd Brigade, 1st Iraqi Army Division. We all raise our hands. And he goes on to just tell us the most graphic, brutal war stories any of us have ever heard. They started with 12 guys. There are 4 guys left on the team. Everybody else is 2 KIA. The rest have been wounded and medevac back to the U.S. He had to come over because he was an air officer for the battalion. They weren't really doing anything. So now he was the number 2 on that team. We just sat back and we had just watched Armageddon. And there's a great scene in Armageddon when Owen Wilson's character, he just stops the guy and he goes, oh, so scariest environment imaginable. That's all you had to say. Scariest environment imaginable. We literally said that shit to him. We go, oh, that's all you had to say. Scariest environment imaginable. Got it. So that's literally how we found out where we were going. We were like, okay, here we go, boys.
What a wake up call, man. It's
yes,
like,
sir.
And he wasn't holding anything back.
No.
He was like, you are going to hell.
It's exactly what the story was.
All right. Honestly, when you heard that, were you a little fired up?
Listen, man, I couldn't believe it. I think I was newly engaged at the time. And one of the cool things about being on this team, we had sat phones. We had a couple sat phones so we could make calls home pretty frequently. And I remember, I think I called my wife and maybe sent an email to, or my fiance, maybe sent an email to my mom. And I was just like, hey, this is going to be awesome. And my wife now, my fiance at the time, oh, that's so great. I'm so glad you're going to have fun. And just like, yeah, because it's going to be fun. Let me tell you this. I told you, it was mainly like the team was built around kind of 8 infantry type guys. Yep. We were going to be the dudes going out and operating. And then we had some support staff. Our S2 Alpha, so our Intel number 2, was a recently meritoriously promoted staff sergeant. And he was from Marine Corps Aviation. His job, previous to joining our team, he would give like weather reports to pilots in the morning. His real job, he was on the all Marine Corps softball team. This dude would travel around the world. He had just gotten back from Thailand playing in some softball tournament. He came up to me that night. We'd hit it off. He had a great personality.
Yeah.
And he came up to me that night. And I know he won't mind me sharing this. He's a great dude. But he was like, sir, I ain't ready for this shit. And I was like, dude, you're a fucking Marine. You're ready for anything. We got you, dude. Don't worry about it. Bad guys in front of you, shoot that way. This shit ain't rocket science. Just bring the fight. And he ended up doing great for us and everything. But that really did happen. And because he was like, man, I got this career. I've only been in 6 years. I'm already a staff sergeant. And I know I want to retire. And I go, dude, you're fine. Take a breath. Everything's great. But that's how it started for us.
Take a knee, face outboard, take a drink of water.
Don't forget that EGA on your chest. You're not some dude off the street, bro.
That's right. All right. Doing. So you get this brief. How long before you left did you guys have to do co-training with this Iraqi unit you were taking out? Did they give you?
No, that unit was actively engaged.
Oh, wow.
And so got that brief, let's call it Sunday night. Monday night, we got on helicopters and flew to Habaniya, which give you just a little background geography, please. That time and place. So Fallujah had essentially fallen at the beginning of 2005. Ramadi was in the midst of getting hit right when we get there early 06. Ramadi was really building up. Mm-hmm. And so this place that we went called Jazeera was very close to Habbaniyah, very close to Camp Taqadum, TQ. But that area falls kind of right in between Ramadi and Fallujah. Ramadi to the north, Fallujah to the south. And we're right on Route Michigan, which connects those two cities, right on the Euphrates River. Mm-hmm. And so we flew in helicopters, got on 53s, flew to Camp Habbaniyah. And Habbaniyah, we go right to the Iraqi side of the base. Habbaniyah had a National Guard contingent, I think from Pennsylvania and Utah at the time. I got a great story about some of those guys shooting for us here in a bit. But we went to the Iraqi side where we linked up with our brigade headquarters. Okay. And the Marine Corps doesn't have brigades, but the Iraqi Army has brigades. So we're talking in kind of Iraqi formation lingo. And I think we were there maybe one day where we got kind of the intel data brief from the brigade intel guys. And, hey, same story. This is as active as it gets, boys and girls. So get ready to party. And that was kind of the message. That part of the story is really funny. We always had like a group of barracks at a place called the Alamo back on Habbaniyah. It was on the Iraqi side, but the Americans staffing it. And we would actually send guys off the line, 2 Marines, try to do it every month, 2 Marines every month, got to go back to Habbaniyah for 2 days. And it wasn't like any of the big fobs, no great shower or anything, but it was just a couple days to take a breath.
A shower. Just a
That's
shower.
It, man. Yes.
A shower. Yes. That's what it was. Like a shower was the shit.
And shit, that time of year, the shower was your heater. Because January, it's cold. I'm like, man, we're going to Iraq. It's hot desert. It was free. We froze our ass off for the first couple months.
All right. So you get in, you get 1 day. How quickly was the first operation? And just tell us a little bit about what you witnessed in your people you were with. You said they were all experienced before. What was like kind of the mentality of, all right, let's go, let's start, let's dig in and let's get going?
Yeah, we got about 3 or 4 days, as my memory remembers, to do left seat, right seat patrolling with the unit that was already there. And like I said, they had been attrited massively. They only had 4 of their original members left. They got backfilled. I mean, they had a full team at this point, but a lot of backfield guys. But there was a couple dudes that were extraordinary Marines. One of them was a gunner. The Marine Corps has these things called gunners that are chief warrant officers of the infantry. They're kind of the gods of infantry.
Right.
They're called weapons officers. That's the actual name. But a chief warrant officer from the infantry, that's kind of like the subject matter expert on all Marine gunnery and employment of all Marine gunnery. And that team had a CW3. Man, I wish I could remember his name off the top of my head. Henniston maybe comes to mind. But anyway, this guy was as hard as nickel steak. And he kind of grabbed all of us all the guys that were going to run companies and really gave us the down and dirty. And he just hammered all the right things, man. Hey, 90% solution executed violently wins most of these fights. Just whoever's more violent, your Iraqis are going to follow you. Don't trust any of them to lead the way. It's all on you. You want to close with and destroy, they're going to have to follow you to do it. And so that was like, okay, man. Okay, that really opened our eyes. I'd heard stories from other units that maybe didn't have that same guidance. They took a more hands-off advisory role. Just didn't have the same kind of effects that we did in RAO at the time. So anyway, had that 4 or 5 days with him. And then here we go. So, boss comes down with the working schedule. We had patrols out pretty much 24/7. You're either patrolling, you're on QRF, or you're out on an ambush at night. Repeat. Unless there was a major operation and then those things would happen, some sort of intel-driven stuff. That took us a while to get there, but we did get there. And some of your boys even wanted to join our party because we got engaged so frequently. But, I think we were probably there. I think it was maybe a week before we had our kind of first shooting engagement.
Wow. All right. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the really cool things about our AO, we were not in a built-up area. So picture kind of collections, maybe 10 or 20 houses, and then a quarter mile, a half a mile before the next collection of houses. And it's dead flat, right on the river. Man, almost felt like Vietnam at times. A lot of palm groves. So very cool. Sometimes you just take a security halt and just look around and be like, man, I feel like I'm in Vietnam. All the movies I watch is kind of like that.
This is the feeling. That's right.
Yeah, really. But one of the great things about having that kind of open space is that it gives you more access to effects from higher. So we had artillery at Camp Habanilla. We had some dudes from the Utah National Guard, a Paladin howitzer section there. So we had 2 Paladin 155 millimeter self-propelled howitzers, and it got to the point where they were kind of just working for us because getting fires cleared in the built-up urban areas really tricky to do. And then of course we had all the fast movers for troops in contact situations. We had TQ and airbase real close by. Oh, wow. So we would get at least the rotary wing guys would be on us quick. And that was awesome. And our boss really made sure, hey boys, we need to employ all of our ass kicking ability. This isn't just, this is not you shoot, I shoot. You shoot me with a 7.62 by 39. I'm going to drop a 500-pounder on your face. Yes. That's just,
and that's a thing, right? To know that your commanding officer is like, hey, yeah, there's this presence of ROEs over here, but we just went through Fallujah. Ramadi is blowing up. People are getting injured all the time. We're taking casualties. We're done. We're gonna destroy the enemy. Did that give all of you guys this grander sense of that there was this support behind you?
It absolutely did. We, again, time and place, luck of the draw. We certainly, in terms of ROE, we probably had it as good as anybody in that Iraq wartime. I mean, the 03 guys on the invasion, of course, that's a whole different story. But the lawyers were there. They were making sure, there was some escalation of force criteria that had to occur. But we always understood that we had the support and the trust that the special trust and confidence that the president gives us as commissioned officers. We really felt that in a big way. So it took all the hesitation out of the game. And my heart broke for some of my teammates that then did follow-on tours to Afghanistan, in the, early teens, 11, 12, 13. And to hear what they had to do just to get a javelin shot off, man, was heartbreaking.
Hey, I was there right around the Marja push. I was operating with the agency in South Central Afghanistan during that time. And one of the ground branch PMCOs was a former high-ranking Marine officer, and his son was a Marine officer that had gotten hit with these stupid overt daylight patrols in the same area that they had cleared the day before, and I remember just like him shaking his hand. This guy was a very, very highly respected guy within the Corps itself, and now he's at this program with SAD, and him just shaking his head like, I don't understand this. I don't get this. And so, I always love to hear the stories from 04 to 08, really, because I think that was the time where, if you look at it, the insurgency caused some challenges, but the adaptation for the COIN initiatives that spread out to units like yours and everybody else, they gave you guys that support, that overhead support, that no, go engage the enemy and kill the enemy. And that's what America is about, right? That's when you have that sensation, you're on the front, and that the guy behind you, the officer behind you, is going to be like, no, I told my men to go get in the fight, and I'm getting them the assets they need and deserve.
Couldn't agree more. In fact, it's the only way. It's the only way. And it just goes back. I mean, it's the special trust and confidence placed into you by the President of the United States. That's what everybody's commission document states. Yeah. So then to go back and, I know the president said that, but we don't really mean it. X, Y, get out of here, man. You invested all this time and money in my training. I'm fully bought in and committed. I'm the one in the boots here at this time with my ass in the breeze. Trust that I'm going to do the right thing. And, you have a few stories, my lie, let's say. I mean, really one of the few that you can come up with in the last 50 years, that some lawyer will say, well, maybe, okay, things happen. But we don't shut down the program. We don't shut down the trust that we give these folks because of one bad apple. And you kind of see that with policing here in the States in the last 10 years. It's brutal.
It's absurd. Right? There's 3.5 million officer engagements a year or something even crazier. I mean, it's an astronomical number. And you look at the FBI crime statistics for cops firing on unarmed males, both white and black or Hispanic, whatever it is, and the numbers are so freaking low. It's a testament to the control and the responsibility placed in these people that are on the streets engaging in a very hostile environment. And I look back at all the stories from, I never got to go to Iraq. And so, it was a completely different experience than everybody else that had, those times from 2004 to 2008, man, in Iraq, if you had the luck and the unfortunate reality that was your time, that was what you had to work with, was the trust in the people. It seemed that were behind you guys to allow you to go do this job, which was insanely difficult.
Yeah, man, exactly that. I mean, it just brings to mind the old quote from Colonel Jessup in A Few Good Men. I would rather you just say thank you and move along. I think most of us would do way better to just thank our local police department for doing what they're doing, or thank our Marines and SEALs. Just thank you guys. Yeah. I didn't do it. I didn't have to do it. You kept the wolves at bay. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. You're in within a few days, you're out, you're getting into your first ticks, you're getting the support. When did you realize, all right, this op tempo is going to be significant? And what were the things that you started thinking about from a leadership perspective for not only your team, but for the Iraqis too? Because what a lot of the listeners, you have to understand this. This is the time where we, the head shed, realized we have to inspire the locals to want to fight for whatever it is they're fighting for, which is, to pull away from the tyranny of Saddam Hussein's regime, right? And to be able to fight for that, I don't know if it's independence, but the fight for the national pride of what was emerging, right? And that's what it is. You're fighting for this deeper construct of meaning. And for them, they didn't know what any of that is. So what were the things that you were relying upon as the intensity increased? What were you telling your team and what were you telling the Iraqis?
Yeah. So this team was not in a training, status. They were operational from the start. So we had to look at it. Okay, how much change can we really affect in a short period of time? Marine Corps does a pretty cool job of teaching leaders to back plan when you're doing any kind of planning things. Back plan from the most deadliest scenario, and then plan all the things that are most likely to get you killed. Eventually you'll get to those things that are that you still need to train for, but they're not as important on the objective. So that's kind of what we did. Did a ton of shooting. Let me take it even a step back. We realized, everybody realized that at this time there was no NCO Corps in the Iraqi army. That didn't exist.
Oh wow!
They had sergeants, if you will, but not like what we understand as an NCO here in the American military. And this is even true as you look at the American military versus the Russian military, for instance. Again, another very Chinese military, for instance. These are top-down driven organizations that depend on all advice, instruction, orders coming from on high. Mm-hmm. Well, that ain't going to happen when you got 10 dudes in the middle of a field in a firefight. It's just you guys. Now what do? So we had to instill that sense of pride and ownership of the operation to that very junior level, so that when dad gets killed, the rest of you don't die. You still understand the intent of the operation. At the end of today, what needs to be done, and you can move forward through the objective and win. And so that's what my team of staff NCOs, we had a gunnery sergeant and four badass staff sergeants. And those guys really took it upon themselves to take time out of their day. So like I said, tempo was high. An average patrol would be 4 or 5 clicks. Well, a 4 or 5 click patrol in Iraq, especially once we moved into the summer months, that could take you 3 or 4 or 5 hours. Mm-hmm. And then if you add contact in there, then it just extends forever. While you're not patrolling, while you're not, up and you're in your QRF status, it wasn't just time to sleep and play video games. That's the time to get with your units and really talk through this stuff. And it's made even harder because you're talking through an interpreter. But that's where we really formed these incredible bonds, some of which have lasted to this day. So my staff sergeant, Carl Newman, who was my partner, he would go and talk to my company's enlisted guys. They'd have powwows over chai, and just talking through, you're running hot washes. Hey, what worked well in our patrol today? What didn't go well? If we got kinetic, did we get guns up quick? I better hear those machine guns immediately. We have to get fire superiority immediately. And I'll start telling stories here in a second, but that took some hard lessons to learn that for those guys. And then I'm with my company commander and we're walking through planning. I'm teaching them how to conduct rehearsals. How do I run a rifle range? Do we even know if these guys' rifles are zeroed? So there was a lot of things we had to build into our daily lives to get these guys up to snuff. We had to do that also. There's a lot of ego in that world, in that era of mind.
Cultural, yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Talk about that. Because I think for me, anytime I worked with a foreign counterpart, that was the most frustrating aspect of the whole thing. Our programs are all designed to humble you instantaneously, to knock the arrogance out of you right from the get-go.
Yes.
Well, their whole culture is indicative of never losing face amongst your peers. And talk a little bit about that struggle, if you could, before we get into some of the
yeah, man. So Afghanistan, this concept of Pashtun Wali that I learned about after, I couldn't have operated the same way in Afghanistan as I did with my Iraqis because of what you're talking about, this kind of cultural pride. If an Afghani man feels like he's been slighted, that's where a lot of those green on blue attacks came from.
Yep.
Guy took offense and now he makes his mission to kill the guy that he was offended by. The Iraqis, they will take offense. But I think just through force of character and the fact that we were Marines, they respected that enough to realize, okay, maybe I should listen up. And they basically did that. But I had a couple run-ins, and I'll share one with you. We'll kind of jump ahead. Once it became clear that we were going to be kind of the most fightingest unit in the area at the time, that's just what we did every day. So we're taking LPOPs, cover of darkness. We know where they're planting IEDs, et cetera. And, we'd wake up in the morning, send a patrol out, security patrol out with the intent to get into a fight. And we started getting real technical using all the tools in our toolbox. But this one particular fight, I had this Iraqi major with me. He refused to shoot in front of his troops. He refused to come to any of the rehearsals, just refused. Absolutely refused. And of course, I'd tell my boss and he'd tell his boss and they'd smack him a little bit. But it's, it didn't seem to be changing quickly enough for my liking, at least. Anyway, sent out a security patrol in the morning. I talked to Carl and I said, hey, dude, you guys take shots. We had an idea where the bad guys might be because they're always doing the same stuff. And I said, hey, I want you to break contact. I'm going to call ahead. I'm going to get these guns laid. So we're going to have a fire mission ready to go as soon as you guys get into contact. We're going to have a trigger line at this road. As soon as you guys clear that road, I'm calling that fire mission. We did it. It worked perfectly. So they bang, 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 gun start. We're all up on the roof watching it happen. I see my guys, last man clears the street. As they're clearing the street, I get a bad guy truck comes hauling ass down the street right at them. So now I know they're getting shot at from here. They're getting shot at from this truck. We engage the truck. Truck crashes into a ditch. My guy's clear. I get that fire mission called. We had a priority target, which is hard to get, but we had those guys. So the guns were laid. So the time that I'd say, hey, fire priority target number 1001, about 30 seconds, first rounds are out.
Wow.
So bang, bang, bang. 10 or 15 minutes goes by. It's quiet. Now we're going to send another patrol out to look at the engagement area, do a battle damage assessment. And we come out on this BDA. The whole time, by the way, that we're in this fight, this major that refuses to come on anything or acknowledge any of his soldiers is in the fetal position on the ground doing nothing. So I say, hey, Major, you're on me. And I'm talking through my interpreter, and he comes walking with me. And we're going through the engagement area, and it's not a large area, but there's a lot of trees, so you can't really see it from where we were. So we patrol through. We find it was the most beautiful battle damage assessment I ever got to report back to my Artie brothers because we had 2 KIA, and we think we had another one that got it. We saw drag marks. The reason we figured he probably died is because we had the entirety of his leg from just above his knee laying there on the ground. So he probably lost that blood pretty quick and ended up expiring on the other side of the river. Then as we come back, and I hate to do this, but the Marine mind in those days, it was all movie quotes, man. So we had just watched this movie 7 with Brad Pitt, cool movie. And there's a scene in it, and I'm gonna describe what I do. So we're coming through, and I'm up on my gun, and the last thing we do is hit this truck to make sure it's clear. And I'm coming up, and I'm looking over the door, and I can't really tell. The guy's slumped over, and he's got his AK right down in his lap. And I open the door, and as I open the door, he raises his head, and his head is canoed. Oh. But he raised his head. He was just, in the throes of death. He wasn't quite dead, but he had a pulse, and he was still alive. So I made that Iraqi major treat him. He had this really high-speed jacket on that he loved. It kept him warmer than everybody else. I made him take his jacket off and treat this guy. I go, well, he's alive. We don't murder dudes after the battle's over, so treat him. And he complained about that, but my boss didn't care, and his boss ended up sending him away. We actually never saw him again after that op.
Dude, for me, it's you realize just the nepotism of how profound it is when you're dealing with these, like, and you get somebody like a Terp who's good, and you're like, all right, dude, what's the deal with this? Oh, that's the other general who's in Baghdad.
That's where you get all your great intel is through those Terps.
That's right. That's his first cousin. That's his other buddy. And you're like, oh, how much time does he have in combat? None. He just got here, and it's just like, and you start to go, well, God, how am I going to do this? How am I going to work with what I got? But it sounds to me like the other Iraqis that you had, they sounded pretty tough, and they were gravitating towards those, your NCO influence to a pretty.
We made a conscious effort to identify kind of the best of the bunch, and we made them, okay, hey, you're the company gunnery sergeant.
Yeah.
You're the company first sergeant. Like, we gave them roles and responsibilities that forced the other soldiers to look at them like, oh my God, maybe this is the guy I need to follow. These guys weren't all Rambo. In fact, if I could just get them shooting generally in the same direction, that was kind of a win. We didn't care. We knew we were going to win the fight anyway. But the few good ones that we did find, man, we really rode them. And made them believe, and they ended up being great leaders. I don't know how much time we have left, but the guy that I was partnered with, my company commander, he was the best of the bunch. Everybody acknowledged that by the end of our time, and it had nothing to do with my guidance or leadership. It had everything to do. He was the only Sunni in our formation, the only Sunni officer. Everybody else was Shia. So the way that he grew up, his kind of sect was in charge.
Yeah.
So he kind of was used to being in charge. He didn't have to like figure out his way through it, and he was courageous by nature.
Oh, that's cool.
You know how it is, brother.
Yep.
Courage on the battlefield is contagious, just like cowardice is. Yep. So if you got some dudes that you really look up to, and they're showing that real courage, like he did, I think that's what made our unit in particular so successful and deadly to the enemies we were fighting. Because the Jundi that would have normally just been smoking a cigarette and hiding, trying not to die, they were willing to follow because they saw that courage from my advisor team and some of these Iraqis that we identified early on.
I love it. All right. So how far into this deployment for you did you feel like you guys hit that real efficient battle rhythm where it's just like, all right, we know the mission, we know what works, we know what doesn't, and then you start to tighten up, like the proficiency of your operational ability just becomes like this it's this poetic thing that emerges. When did you feel that, and what were some of the things that resulted of how effective you guys were?
Exactly right. So my boss was smart enough to understand after every engagement, we're going to have a hot wash. We're going to talk through this thing. Good things, bad things. How do we become more deadly on this battlefield? And for the first 3 months, we kind of worked our way through that. How can we employ arms better? How can we get artillery shooting faster on our behalf? Is there a way we can get helicopters up quicker? Maybe if we start doing intel-driven operations, sending some requests to hire, they'll have units on standby for us in the form of Cobras, Hueys, things like that. And that took about 3 months. In those 3 months, we had a lot of practice, if you will. We were fighting quite a bit. And through those fights, we really did figure out, how to employ our QRF faster. Can we drive them here? Casevacs. Are we saving as many lives as we can? I mentioned before we got on air, I was on a 12-man team. This 12-man team was decorated with 15 Purple Hearts.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So, I mean, in terms of like running guys to shock trauma, that happened a lot. And, the golden hour is everything on the battlefield. And so we started really drilling down on how to make sure we're getting guys to that second level of care better. We had an amazing corpsman on our team, a Navy doc, still a personal friend of mine. We all love him, although he drops off the net here and there from time to time. He's a maniac. If you could just bottle him up and just break for war kind of guy. Personal life all over the place as long as I've known him, but on that battlefield, he is as cool an operator as I've ever seen when it comes to treating dudes. And I think really he became a force multiplier because the Iraqis became less scared to go out and get wounded because they knew if they did, man, we got Doc Wig in the back and he's going to fix you up, at least fix you up well enough to get you up to, TQ and go to shock trauma, things like that. So
that was
him a shout out.
Loved him. It was the history of the Navy corpsman and the Marine Corps that really drove me to want to be a corpsman. Like that was the thing. It was like, man, I want to have that, I want to have that trust in my guys that, that I'm going to be there in the middle of it and I'm going to be helping save their lives. Cause there's just something about that reality. And what I do is I commend the entire military for the advancements they made, post Mogadishu in developing TCCC and tactical combat casualty care. People always ask, well, why were there so few casualties in the GWAT? And my response is because the medical training that took place at every level, at every unit was so efficient and so squared away that was the results. That's why even though we were in a war longer than Vietnam, like we didn't even get close to their casualty count of 58,000 because I think the proficiency of those medics that were on the battlefield and then how they train their counterpart, how they train their team to address trauma and then the response, right? Those medical stations and aid stations that were scattered all over all those theaters. man, they were just incredible with what they did.
Yeah. Yes, two things come to mind. First off, you know this. I mean, you know, the doc on any team is the most protected member of that team. You are the most beloved, and we will whip anyone's ass who tries to mess with our doc. That's just number one. But number two, I will say that our doc, and just the training we got, and I skipped over it because the shooting stuff sounds sexier at times. But we did a full, you know, I don't know if they were calling it TCCC at the time, but we did our pig lab. We were running IVs on each other. So he made sure we got really good at that early. Because, you know, you are your own best first responder in a lot of these cases, especially when you're operating like we were with just two dudes, and 10 Iraqis.
All right. So now, how long was the deployment, and was there a moment in time where you start to see the fatigue of operations take place to present itself? What were some of the signs you were looking for? And then also, like, how do you keep your guys motivated to stay in the fight? It sounds to me like your group didn't need any of that motivation. They were in it regardless. They were dedicated to the job, but obviously as a leader, you're looking for those things, right? You're looking for the cracks in the armor that could potentially jeopardize the safety of future operations.
I think our tempo was so high that it kind of prevented some of that stuff from coming in. I also believe that, you know, the Marine Corps deployment cycle, thank God I wasn't in the Army, man. Like you said about Secretary Parnell, I mean, like 400 days. The Marine Corps was doing 7-month deployments. Mm-hmm. So, you know, by the time you really feel like you got it figured out, time to go home, boys.
Yeah.
So I think we missed some of that fatigue. I'll tell you at the end, it started to get there. But our deployment was really broken down kind of into three sectors, if you will. You know, the initial phase where it's just like, oh my God, this is really happening. Everything is new. Every fight is new. Then you get into the kind of the 3 to 6 month mark where you're like, man, I think I got this thing figured out. Not only do I have it figured out, I think other people are realizing we're doing such a good job. They want to become part of it. You know, I mentioned to you before we got on the air that we had parts of Team 1 and Team 3 that would shop parts of a platoon out to us. One of the ways we started this interaction, there a guy named Nick Norris was a young lieutenant on one of these SEAL teams that was out with us. Him and Seth Stone. I know Seth Stone has since passed, but you want to talk about a guy that looked the freaking part. I remember meeting him. I was like, God damn, who's this guy? This guy's big, strong motherfucker.
The epitome of a Navy officer. The epitome.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed.
And, you know,
but anyway, those guys.
For the audience that doesn't know, also Seth Stone was a part of Task Force Bruiser, which was Jocko Willink. Seth and Leif Babin were platoon commanders running those guys in Ramadi. And so, you know, you know, the fact that you guys were as operating at the level you were doing, for them to come out and be like, hey, we want to come fight with you, man, that speaks volumes as to what you guys were doing and the efficiency.
We had a gigantic water tower in the middle of our combat outpost. So figure, you know, a collection of maybe 10 houses. We had the engineers come out and put a HESCO around it. So we, you know, relatively secure. Right in the middle was this giant water tower. And I came home from patrol one time. I didn't know all the coordination that my boss was doing a lot of times. So he had Jocko out there and they were chatting about what they could do to help us whip some more ass. And I come home from this patrol and I just happened to glance up at the water tower and I'm like, man, what are these black spots up there? They knew. Anyway, some of your brothers had gone up there and cut out these spider holes. And so they started sniping on our behalf, you know, just providing us overwatch as we're meandering through these fields. Now the Bubbas are up on, you know, whatever they were shooting at the time. They were up on the big guns, you know, giving us a little guardian angel support. So it was freaking awesome.
That's cool. All right. So you get to the end of it. Was it hard to leave?
It became, you know, the bonds. It's just those battlefield bonds that become hard to leave. And so our Iraqis, they were pretty emotional when we were leaving because, you know, just like it had been some big time fighting for us, you know, these were the biggest fights that any of these dudes had been into up to that point. And, you know, so that was hard. We had, you know, it became our task to introduce them to our replacements And, once we got a good warm and fuzzy that we had a great group of dudes coming in behind us, and we did, I think they were, my memory might betray me, but I think they were from 3rd Battalion, 2nd Marines, 3-2, if I remember correctly. And, the bunch of great experienced guys that came in came in to replace us. And so once we were able to make those introductions and, I could point, hey, this dude's already been in Ramadi or Fallujah or something. Once I kind of explained that they had a lot of good operational working experience in country, our Iraqis settled in. But, one of the real sad stories, you work so hard to bring these guys to a certain level. And I think in my company, I probably lost 12, somewhere around 12 KIA. Wow. Under my command, if you will, not Americans, but Iraqis. And they were executing the fight that I was calling on them to fight. So, those were all hard losses. Well, let me just add this one story, because I guess it paints a picture for the love that I really had for these guys. And kind of, even though we were the main effort, according to the president and the commandant, the rest of the normal formations in big Army, big Marine Corps, they really didn't even know we were out there operating. So I think we had 2 KIAs and I had 2 urgent surgicals. And for anybody in that AO to operate, it was a doctrine that you could not run a convoy on that route of Michigan, that particular stretch of Route Michigan, with less than a 12 vehicle convoy. And wow. It took 2 days of coordination to get anybody on the road there. I had 4 trucks on my whole team. We were running guys with 2 vehicle convoys all day, every day up and down that road. Just like, little sign of the cross. Let's run it, boys. Let's go as fast as we can here. And anyway, I'm running a medevac to TQ. I got blood all over me. I remember I had a t-shirt on and sweatpants. Because I was kind of, on QRF status at the time when we got hit. And running these boys up through, I got me and another American in my Humvee, and then I got an Iraqi Humvee behind me carrying all the wounded, the 2 wounded, 2 killed. And they stop us at the gate. We've done this many times before. And they go, sir, I need your Iraqis to all step out of the vehicle. I need them to show, unload and show clear on their weapons and such. And I go, dude, time is money. I got 2 dudes bleeding to death. Fuck no. My name is Lieutenant Andrew Mulligan Parks, United States Marine Corps. I will be at shock trauma. Send whoever you want to come and chew my ass. And that's what we did. Wow. Yes. We pressed and we got there and they got my guys in immediately. We had developed a really close working relationship with those guys at shock trauma. There was a Navy Master Chief Petty Officer that was running that thing. Anyway, I told him, I said, Master Chief, I apologize. You may be catching some hell over this. He goes, dude, you did the right thing. I'll crush anybody who comes here. Well,
that's awesome.
It wasn't 15 minutes later that this freaking Army guy comes rolling up. I don't know, Sergeant First Class type. And he's doing his job. But he comes up. Where's Lieutenant Parks? And I go, I'm right here. And like I said, bloody t-shirt and sweatpants with my flak and Kevlar,
Yeah.
And, he goes, well, you're not going to do blah, blah, blah. And I go, please stop. I said, first of all, you're talking to an officer of the United States Marine Corps. Secondly, I'll do what I did every day, twice on Sunday. Come chew my ass. That's fine. He goes, well, you're not going to talk to me like that. I'm just like, I just did talk to you like that. So take it up. I go, run it up your chain. I'll run it up mine. We'll see who wins, dude. I mean, he wouldn't let it go, though. He wouldn't let it go. And so he's yelling. And this Master Chief comes out and just got him his ass and ran him the hell off. And I'll love that guy till the day I die for doing that for me. He was awesome. That was so cool. But anyway, we love those guys. And that's the only way you can operate in that environment. Of course, you're going to form bonds with the dudes you're fighting with. Doesn't matter. Race, color, or creed. It don't matter. Everybody bleeds red, and we're all on the same team here. That's
and
it.
I think that, for me, that's the essence of this whole thing. Because obviously, you go and you're in this high threat environment. People are getting killed, right? But you keep going back into the fight. You just keep going. You don't quit, right? And that's what it is. What was it like when you came back? Your team gets dispersed. You made the decision to get out. What were some of the things that you were going to take with you that you knew that were critical for whatever that the next chapters of your life were going to be?
Yeah, listen, I got back in, we got back late 2006, and I was kind of a guy without a home at that point. But I had made enough of the right people happy that I got to meet General Mattis, and he said, Parks, what do you want to do in the Marine Corps? You get to write your ticket. Where do you want to go? And this is going back to just being kind of silly here, but my first two platoon sergeants had 7 marriages between the two of them.
Oh my God.
And I just saw what a heavy burden the GWAT was on a family. And I knew at that point that I wanted to get married and have a family. And I really felt like it was going to be hard to do that in that lifestyle. This is not to say that there aren't thousands of folks that did exactly that and it worked out perfectly. It just, in my mind, in my 26 or 7-year-old brain at the time, I didn't see how it could possibly work. So I said, well, sir, I think I'm going to get out. And he was like, well, we're going to get as much out of you as we can before you leave. So they threw me. I got to be like the operations officer as a first lieutenant for the entirety of the West Coast training operation for all the new advisors going forward.
That's cool.
So, I mean, I had a major that was my boss, but he was a pilot, a Harrier pilot. So he didn't really have a lot of ground stuff to impart to the teams. So I got to, it was me and a collection of badass senior enlisted. I had a master gunnery sergeant, 2 master sergeants, and a gunny. They were all seriously wounded guys that were going through their rehab. And it was like the 5 of us that would come up with the training plan for all of these folks. You want to talk about feeling like you're way over your head. I mean, every team is led by, at a minimum, a major, at a maximum, a colonel.
Wow.
So it's Lieutenant Parks, not ordering, but basically in charge of all these senior dudes.
Yeah.
Anyway, to answer your question, that last year allowed me to leave the Marine Corps feeling like whatever came in front of me from here on out, and I kind of still feel like this, Dave. I mean, it's kind of easy compared to the stuff that I did back then. So, in the job that I'm a sales guy for a military company. And, so I do a lot of high level briefings, could be on the Hill or with, senior level officers, generals, et cetera. Just communicate the point, know your stuff, be technically proficient, tactically sound, know your stuff and, trust it, man. Nobody's going to shoot you over it. So it's all relatively easy. And that's just kind of how it's been.
All right. Last question for you. What advice could you give to a young man right now that's contemplating joining? They're not quite sure if we're through the craziness of what we just went through. They're, maybe they're a little nervous about what's out in front of us with some of the other things that are going on around the world in Ukraine or in the Middle East. Like, what is the thing that what information or wisdom that you could bestow on them that would, kind of help push them over the edge to say, no, this is a career or just a short portion of my life that will really be transformational?
Man, you will never know how good you can be unless you try. And they're the great crucible. I mean, and this is, I fancy myself a bit of a historian. I love to read and stuff. I mean, these are almost biological kind of archetypes at this point. I mean, the heroic archetype, just to see what you can do on the field of battle. I mean, this is what our ancient Indian tribal leaders would sit around campfires at night and go over this. You weren't a man in some of these ancient cultures until you had, proven yourself on the field of battle and been with a woman and had children. I mean, those were kind of the 3 pillars of manhood. And I'm not saying that every man has to do that or every woman has to experience these things, but I am saying it's not bad for you. And I mean that in the biblical sense, in the worldliness sense. It will give you a greater perspective for everything you do from here on out. than having not done it. I have plenty of friends that thought about doing it, that wanted to do it, that would have been phenomenal at it, but they didn't know, or they didn't do it. And they always have that thing in the back of their head. Man, I wish I would have tried it. Man, I bet I would have been good. You know, the folks that do sign up, answer the call, you never have to question that. You did it. And the opportunities are boundless, as you and I both know. I mean, if you want something bad enough, if you get in the door, you make it through the original screening process of boot camp, which is challenging for anybody. I mean, you know, that's the first crucible. But I think any hard thing you can do in life only makes things easier going forward. Yeah, I had an old leader. He was like, every hard thing you do is like a marble, and you put a marble in a cup. And, you know, right now you got like 3 marbles in there. But one day you're going to look at that cup and there's going to be 50 of them. Because in the later part of life, you're going to have to start drawing from that, because you're not going to be able to do hard things anymore. And you're going to have to live off of those memories. And you want a cup really full, so you got a great story to tell. And I was like, shit, makes sense to me. Makes sense to me, man.
Andy, man, that is true genius right there, man. Have a big jar of marbles that each represent something badass. I love it. Hey, I thank you so much for coming on. You know, your story and the story of the guys that you went to war with, and including those Iraqis, it's meaningful, it's historic, and I really appreciate you wanting to come on and share a little bit of your history with us. It means the world to me.
Man, thank you so much. Really special opportunity. Probably made even more special. We're two or 3 days removed from the birthday, 250 years. And just big shout out to my brothers, Mitt 3-5, Cowboys. We're legends in our own mind, if nothing else. And that's good enough for us. So can't wait to see you boys. Hope I did you proud. And thanks so much, Dave. You're awesome, man.
Giddy up. All right.